You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the On Purpose Podcast. You know how I feel about you. I couldn't do this without you, and quite honestly, I wouldn't want to. It'd just be me talking, and who the hell wants to hear that all the time? So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for your support, whether you're showing up on the podcast apps, YouTube, all of them. You're joining us over on Patreon, where your monthly memberships, $2 to $10 a month, help keep this whole thing rolling and growing. So if that's something that interests you, please visit us over at Patreon, the On Purpose Podcast, and join us there. You get exclusive early access to episodes. We'll throw in some additional bonus footage there, and it's just another place for us to interact that I kind of like, because it's different than social media in that the algorithm isn't playing if you see things or not. It's just really, it's a community about us and people wanting to live a purposeful life and help us reach our goal of being the most impactful podcast in the world. So this week I'm excited to sit down with somebody that I just find amazing. He was referred to us by another guest not too long ago, and it's been awesome trying to get this set up and doing the research for him. He is an educator, an inventor, a researcher, a research scientist that's made significant contributions to the scientific community. However, it's his unique perspective on happiness and daily life that truly sets him apart. He did a TED Talk titled Inventing Happiness, which really caught my attention and has done very well around the world. So it's our honor today to sit down and talk with Dr. Gordon Chiu. Dr. Chiu, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast. It's an honor to have you here with us today.
Oh, I'm honored to be on here.
I was researching this. This is going to be a fun one because sometimes guests have kind of a story, and I researched the story, and it's good to share the story, but you have many stories. So I wasn't even sure how you're going to show up today. I wasn't sure if I got the wig, because I've seen some videos of you showing up with wigs for podcasts and interviews. We clearly have the different sunglass options. So I'm excited to bring your story to our community, my friend.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you have built a community, because if we get to that topic, community is really important, the right community. Because there are some communities that just don't work for certain people, and they just stay in that community without realizing the awareness to switch to a community that works for them.
Oh, I love it. And I got to tell you, I think as much as people, in certain circles, people bash technology today and talk about how we don't have much interpersonal communication anymore, that's also a choice, right? Because I can take this same technology, just like we're doing now, and talk from around the country and share it with people around the world that I've never actually met, but that we get to impact every week through storytelling and sharing people's journeys, right? So it's a choice.
I'm just going to remind us about community that, like you could be in a community of hoarders. And if you're a hoarder, that probably is good for you, because you get to really train your capabilities. But if you're a giver and you're in a community of hoarders, you're not going to do very well. You're not going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
So you got to the key is awareness of what do we want and why are we here? And also to always remember, insanity's definition is keep on doing the same thing over and over again and expecting for a different outcome.
Yeah. And I think I love that you say that, because that's one of the things we talk a lot about to our community is our circle of five, right? That old saying that you become the sum of the five people you spend the most time with, and owning that circle, right? Not everybody should be in that circle. And there's times you're going to change in your life that new people are going to come in and other people are going to move out. But it takes proactive management, and it takes what you just said. I got to know what the hell I want in life, right? If you're just going through...
Boy, is that hard to figure out.
Is it?
Well, I'll give you an example of how it could be really hard to figure out. If you've done the same thing over and over again, and then now you're 70 years old, and you don't know how much time you have left. Nobody knows, really. It could be 50 and you could only have 5 years left, but we don't know how much time we have, but we believe we have forever. And that's what gets us in trouble, is that we
Mm.
still have time, put it off, put it off. And that's what gets us into the big problem of, yeah, we want change. We want to get to a better place, but we never spend the time to develop the awareness of change, right? And before we started, recording, you had mentioned that what attracted to you was, or common amongst you and I, is retiring, right? And then my view of it, I'll lay my cards out, is I think that retirement requires a lot of practice. So you need to keep trying to retire earlier, and then earlier and earlier, as early as you can, to find out what it's like to be on the other side. People die within a few years of retirement. So if you don't have a lot of practice, right, and you're suddenly retired, how do you know you're not going to leave within the first 2 years? And then the next marker is 5, and the next marker is 10.
Mm.
So those are big humps where just like things break down. Just when you think you're okay, your body says, nope. You were taking all that melatonin because you couldn't sleep. Well, I took it as you didn't need me to do anything anymore, because what I do in your body, I make melatonin.
Yeah.
So if all the melatonin maker in your body says, well, I want to do other things. What did you end up doing? Well, I went and started talking with the other cells that wanted to turn cancerous. And I worked on helping them.
Yeah.
Oh, all they needed is the melatonin makers to help them. And they just turned into this dark void, and they sucked up all this blood. And they tried to make a new you, except it killed the old you. That's not. So, if you don't practice with the right methodology, then you don't reach perfection, right? Practice can make until you're perfect, but the wrong type of practicing could lead to no change in the results or a downward spiral.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. But I think also we use the term retirement differently than previous generations, right? Like previous generations, retirement meant you were kind of done. You were at the end of the things, and you were playing golf, or you were moving to a 55 and older community. Like you were doing stuff that traditional retire were for us at least, and I think a lot of people that are in our circle, retirement means you're leaving one job to go focus on a new passion, to find something new about yourself, to find something new, because there's a lot of life left, right? And I think that's how we defeat those statistics about passing away within certain years of retirement, is we stay curious. We stay learning.
Change the game.
Absolutely.
You just went from Monopoly, right, to the game of life, right? Where you got to roll, and in this particular game of life 2.0, you get to, if you roll double digits on the matching digits, let's say on two dice, you get to, and you do it twice, you now have the magic chance to change your profession. Imagine that if we came up with a board game, and every time, or we'll make it 3 in a row, where you get these 3 in Monopoly, you go to jail. But in the game of life 2.0, you get to change your profession. So originally you were a plumber, and now you're a builder, and then, or from a builder you become a real estate tycoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, Dr. Chiu, we're getting going here, but I like to mentally get us warmed up a little bit before we get into the heavy stuff. Are you ready for your warm-up questions? Yeah. All right.
I'm ready.
Here we go, my friend. Sun rises or sun sets?
Sunset.
Why?
Because I want to be able to see the moon, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So if I did sunrise, I have the whole day, but I wouldn't get to the moon, and who knows what's going to happen. So I want to be able to see that moon.
Okay. That was a quick one, too. You didn't even hesitate.
No.
All right. Song on repeat. What are you listening to currently? What's your song?
I don't really listen to songs on a regular basis. I got too much in here. But I do like music. I think it gets me into a different mood. But a lot of songs on repeat happen to be more recently is How Great Thou Art. Yeah.
That's a good one. All right.
Yeah.
What's your favorite book or book you're currently reading?
The Bible.
Really? The
I'm not
Bible?
currently yeah, but I like the Bible a lot because I think it's just really well written, and a lot of people read it, and and it's just like it brought on so much um angles to it keeps my sanity, because all the things that you know about me just wouldn't make any sense if I wasn't. I think that the Bible being written for such a long time, depending on how you look at it from a perspective, is like, imagine if you could be Moses, right? But imagine if you could stand next to Moses as he parted the waters, right? Oh, yeah, Moses' friend. That's the part that isn't there. I mean, you can just dream of all these things. And we all start out life and, we're in survival mode. So was
Mm.
Moses. He had to do the Exodus. Without him, there wouldn't be it. And what was our Exodus? Like, how did we do it, right? You being able to exit, in your 40s. I did it in my 30s, in my 20s. I've done it a few times. So I don't want to have a PhD in retirement, but apparently that's what it takes to retire. Like, yeah, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Chu, you get to have dinner with one person. Who do you want to have dinner with, and what do you want to learn from them?
Well, right now on my mind, I'd like to have dinner with you, and it's on me. I'd love to.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you and your wife, right? Because meeting people, especially with what you've accomplished, right? Which is you're traveling around the world. I mean, we couldn't do our podcast for a month plus because I went with my kids down to North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and I was dealing with some serious inventions. Yeah, I mean, my life is like being Alfred, and I sometimes didn't work for Batman. So, it's like, yeah. And I love to meet you and your superhero powers, right? I've got the Green Lantern in the back here,
Yeah.
just to, yeah, just this, we're all superheroes and superheroines in so many ways, and provided our awareness is up there.
Mm. Oh, that's very
Yeah,
humbling. Thank you for that.
yeah, you and your wife, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
What's a memorable quote or saying that has kind of made an impact on you?
Oh, I've got several, but I got to give credit to well, John F. Kennedy,
Mm.
who said, "We choose to go to the moon." Right? That was September 12th, 1962, when he said to everyone, "We choose to go to the moon because it's hard, not because it's easy. It's going to be pretty hard." And back then, when he said that at Rice University to the nation's space effort, we then put, I think it was a chimpanzee. I wasn't there. It would be 12 years before I would be born. I was born in 74, so I'm 50 this year. Um,
Ah.
but um, but his speech was really powerful. And then if we go back further in time, there was another one where it really is a social media powerhouse, but
Mm.
going before John F. Kennedy. So, what kind of social media quote is going to be really powerful for all your community? Is if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that was Henry Ford.
Oh,
If he
wow.
went to his crowd and said, "What would you like?" Faster horses. And if you listen to those people, right, then there would not be, right, the car,
Mm.
the Ford brand. So thinking through disruption, right, and thinking like oftentimes requires you to first of all be really misunderstood by your community because you're not listening to them,
Yeah.
and then for you to find community amongst those who buy into you. And if you're seeing a doctor that doesn't listen to you, you can either keep seeing the doctor. Like I said, insanity is the definition of trying to see something different that doesn't change, or you switch doctors. So all he had to do was meet somebody else who also realized that we need to go into automobiles, and then that becomes the definition of innovation, is the ability to
Mm.
see change as the opportunity and not a threat. And that becomes Steve Jobs. So I gave you three quotes,
I
right?
love it. Fantastic. You're feeling, I got to tell you, I'm feeling you're warmed up already from on this side of the camera.
Oh, really?
You're ready
Okay.
to go.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Chu, talk to me. I'm going to spin. I want to talk to you. You mentioned something about being in the right community, and I think that's critical. Let's start our conversation with that. How does somebody know if they're in the right community? Because I think sometimes we get confused, right? We're just where we think we are, and maybe we don't step back enough to know, hey, is this the right community? Or we don't take the time, the awareness, as you said earlier, to evaluate our current situation. So how do we know if we're in the right community?
When it is dark enough, you can see the stars, right? That was Ralph Waldo Emerson, right? I believe, right? And then so if you can, right? That's why I wanted to see sunset, to see the moon, right? To see that there's other things going on, and I want to see change. So if you've been stabbed in the back, you know how to find a better community. So
Right.
right, if you've been doing your thing and someone cuts you in line, you are at the tip of the iceberg of understanding why it's important to have community. If you've experienced COVID and you were calling people and you just saw like a mess, right? You understand the value of good community. If you believe AI or you're working on AI, and you do a lot of things like my friend Paul, who introduced us, right?
Yeah.
You know, I studied AI at Harvard, so I didn't go in there because I want to go and work on AI all the time. I want to know if this thing is going to kill us. I need to understand what it is, right? And then, right? And then I found out it's not going to kill us, right? I found that it's people using AI that is going to derail people who said, I'm okay. I'm just going to be in the middle, do my own thing. And then along comes someone with AI that wants to be a hoarder, right? They,
Right.
they originally had the hoarder mentality anyway. So this is just another tool to give them more access, right? So, and for those of us who want to be left alone, we need to be we need to realize that if you do nothing, you're not going to be left alone. Your farm will be pillaged, right? Be constant, do nothing, have no community, and be ready to be derailed, no
Yeah.
matter what age or time period. Well, I can give you a big threat to AI is the lack of electricity. Pull the plug and, there's no AI, right?
For
We're
sure.
back to math and statistics. Like if only the casino, when you're in there, you're paying attention to two things using awareness. One is look how amazing everything is. And ask yourself, and who pays for that, right? And then if you kept repeating to yourself on the slot machine, right, what the odds are, you're going to say like 5,000 to 1. I mean, let's reverse it the other way. If I did 5,000 times, would I at least win one jackpot once? And no, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So any odds like that, you should get yourself out of there, right?
Mm.
How do you get yourself out of there? With the right community, because the wrong community will say, stay here.
Yeah.
It's going to be the next one. So community is really, really important. Kind of like when we did the dinner thing. All right. I want to build community with you. I provide an offering is that we go to dinner, you and your wife, make sure you starve yourself the day before because it's on me, right? So, why would someone not come to dinner with you, right?
Right.
Especially if you give an offer like that. So, the key to building community is to give to the people that raise your awareness so that you know who you're giving to. Because if you're giving to a taker, it'll not be very good. You won't be giving for very long. But if you give to others who will pay it forward, who are already paying it forward, you look at their history and what they've been doing, that means that you will get many, many miles out of your giving.
Yeah. I think you said something that I wholeheartedly agree with, and that I think sometimes we avoid in our current world, and that is a good member of your community is going to disagree with you at times, right?
Oh
Like your
yeah.
community doesn't mean it's everybody that sees the world exactly like you, or it has the
You
same
mean the
exact
other
opinions.
dictatorship?
Right.
Right, your dictatorship is where. See, I think view good community is that first of all, you can feel compassion, right? You can feel power to change. You're not alone, but you're not alone, but with others who want to do much more, right? And while you may have a different approach to doing it, you're um, so I don't want to use the word goals because I also believe setting goals is a problem. Because when you reach your goal, let's say you're climbing Mount Everest and
Yep.
that's your goal, Well, what are you going to do? You're going to go up there celebrate. That's what people celebrate after they achieve their goals. If you do that on the top of Mount Everest and do it for like 2, 3 hours, I mean, that climb wasn't easy. You've now increased your chance of dying coming back down. So community has been around like school. When I went in as an undercover high school teacher that was inventing happiness, a TED Talk. Well, I found a community. Schools are communities. And you know what they do in that community is they test you on materials that people have worked on and discovered for the past 500 years. And they go and sort out who is scoring the best with that 500-year-old material. And then you find out some people get C's and D's. And then you try to correlate that to wealth, and you find out how would someone who doesn't know the past 500-year-old material getting a C or D become super wealthy or able to retire early or
Mm-hmm.
live a quality of life? How did you do that with a C or D? Well, because you were measuring on ancient material. What we need, actually, if you go back
Mm.
to Kennedy and we choose to go to the moon because it's hard, well, we need innovation. We need to find out why AI might kill us, but so might extreme climate conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the third option, which is the fear of either of those, even like inability to cut
Yeah.
taxes and other things like that. The disruption of community and status quo may kill us because we will go crazy. And it's in the craziness that the other two never get to manifest because we started killing each other.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Fear is such a big role in the world, right? People that are afraid do drastic things, or they do
Yeah.
nothing a lot of times, right? They're afraid to take that chance. They're afraid to follow that dream, which could lead to that innovation. They're afraid to retire and move into something else. So,
Like Jerrod, the media who was afraid that they might get eliminated, and they start seeing like different print media
mm-hmm.
disappear. So then they all got really fearful. So that what they did was they hyped up extreme things on everything they're reporting, so that made you look,
Mm-hmm.
right? Clickbait, right? They did all those kind of annoying things that they were trained not to do once upon a time.
Right.
And now the fear of survival will make them do anything. And now you go and read what is real news. Well, because they're so fearful,
Yep.
right, of not getting advertisement dollars, right? Because, everything's offered for free. Well, nothing is really free. It comes at a cost. So if you
Yep.
retire late, the cost is, did you retire the right way?
Mm. Yeah.
Are you retiring healthy? Well, and I'll give an example of going to the moon without a dentist inside your rocket. Well, well, what happens when you have tooth pain? That's like one of the worst pain levels. Um, right? How do you bring your dentist up there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this, Dr. Jim. One of the first questions I had for you as I was getting ready is something that I love in life, and that's living life curiously, right? And
Yeah.
asking questions. Do you remember when you, because you're a very, like, to walk away from some of the stuff you've walked away in and reinvent yourself in these new areas takes a lot of curiosity. Like, you're wanting to learn new stuff. Have you always been that way, or was there a moment as a young kid where you're like, wait, I'm asking way more questions than my friends?
Oh, that happened at 6 years old.
Talk to me about that.
Oh, well, see, I have my father was number one in China in his high school. And he would tell me this. And he got himself into the United States in the 60s. It's going back to Kennedy and we choose hard, go to the moon. And he studied electrical engineering. And then he graduated with a master's in engineering from Columbia University. But the flip side is all that effort gets him fired several times because there were some years where if you looked, and I look like him,
Okay.
dark hair, dark eyes, yellow skin. Maybe my skin's not so yellow because I studied dermatology. But the point is that if you look Chinese, right? When he was fired, he learned the survival method. And I distinctly remember seeing some Amway bottles in the house.
Mm.
You know, he also did other things. I mean, he worked so hard, but the conditions and the constraint relative to how hard he worked when he was younger, right? I mean, he has powers that I never even tapped because my thing was like, I can't be using any of that method because that's what the end point, like I saw the end point, I was saying like, so it's not enough to be number one. How could that be?
Mm.
Right. And I said, well, as long as other people find I'm number one in their hearts, that's better than being number one on paper and saying, hey, here, I'm number one, right? Um, and so I never wanted to be number one. I wanted to learn from like the people who got a C or D. Like I would ask them by the time I got to high school, I'm jumping some periods of time.
Yeah.
It was like, how do you do it? And they said, what do you mean? How do you get yourself out of bed every day? I mean, you got close to failing grades and you get like, so in my high school, I was like a personality. Like I made people want to go to school. And we had a good time. Um, and then of course there was the parental stuff of I just want you to be number one. And I wouldn't, right? I never would because it wasn't just curiosity. It was like observation
Mm.
and awareness that number one, in fact, this is my podcast at Harvard, right? It is talking about how being number one, everyone at Harvard is number one at some point in their life. But how do you learn to be 99? Wayne Gretzky, number 99, right? So
Yeah.
how do you get people to, because you need to be 99 to build community. You could be number one and then you have dictatorship. How do you learn to be like Merlin, knowing that King Arthur would be king one day, but letting him as a boy
Mm.
experience the discovery and then to choose to be the once and future king, right? How do you do that? Um, and how do you be God? Writing this Bible book, which is now a love story, really, and trying to convince other people that you're the creator, and that's all you want. And you give them the freedom, and if you're in Japan, only 2% believe in you. It's like, why don't you just like smash all those and start over, right? But because it's not about a dictatorship, it's about love, and you choose to love, then you have to allow for these things to happen, right? So in watching my dad, I became a very different believer. I was saved by Billy Graham by 17, and I saw how he spoke, and then of course his son. I saw that unless you become number one in the hearts of those who are your
Mm.
followers and all your community. It doesn't have to even be a follower, it can be a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're number one, you for the rest of your life, you will be trying to get number one on a piece of paper. That then there'll be another hoop for another piece of paper, another hoop. And then isn't that the corporate ladder? These are all the same things. There's the same gamification of become number one and then you'll just be talking about yourself and how great you are. My dad still does that because that was the model. So I wanted to break that. My curiosity was I wanted to like I did a lot of crazy things, Jerrod. I wanted to marry a Chinese girl who spoke Chinese, who was Chinese, like a real Chinese, not someone who didn't know how to read Chinese or learn Chinese in America. No, I wanted real. And then I look at myself. I'm the last person you want to bring to the karaoke because I can't read, right? I can't read. And I can't, I can't speak right. When you sing, the words come out weird because of the intonations. And I said, but I believe that as long as, someone loves this character, then I have my relationship. I never want transactions because transactions don't lead to relationship. So it was this curiosity plus. It wasn't just, oh, let me be curious, right? Because curiosity could kill the cat. I
Yeah.
didn't want to. There's a quote by me that I don't even want to talk about myself because didn't Jesus say, only through me? right? Will you be able to go to heaven? And then the Pharisees would say, we got to kill him. So I have always been somewhat fearful about my brotherhood, which is the white man, because I saw what the white man did to my father, right? Called him a
Yeah.
chink, didn't have his job. So I would always let the white, first of all, I would build community around people who valued who I was, right?
Hmm.
As opposed to those who needed me to show them what I might do, right? And
Mm.
go through hoops. So
Yeah.
not being a hoop jumper, hanging around with CD students. I was a friend of a lot of the jocks and the homecoming queens. I mean, that's just like weird stuff for a Chinaman's son, you know? It's like, but where did I learn the technique? I even grew up watching Bruce Lee, and then I looked at other Chinese men who didn't have anything close to that body, and he's not beating up people like Chuck Norris. Most other people are just focused on books, right? And learning. And I said, that can't be the solution. I've got to get the jocks and the homecoming queen to like who I am,
Yeah.
and it's got to be in my personality, not in my capability.
How did your dad take that?
Not well. Right? Not well. No, it was not good. I, it was like, he said, like, this is not going to do well. And I said, here, Dad, and I keep telling him today, because when I became a high school teacher, he said, oh boy, it's like, you had to just go and change this. I gave 900 kids my phone number
Yeah.
at the high school, and not a single one prank called me. I raised the rank of the entire school by getting them into doing things that no one else has done and showing them. I mean, isn't that the definition of why we play sports? Is the show that you take on something you don't know and you're able to transform, right?
Mm.
And you build that confidence. Curiosity plus means that you should go and not just look at it, like go and use it as a tool so that you could develop the confidence and the ability to go from a taker to a giver, right? So that you're not, so how I did it for my dad, I found a way that even he would be like Jedi mind trick, even he would be changed, right? So I had a lead role in the musical, standing house applaud and bring down the house with my role. And when all your teachers start giving you, like they gave me I was doing a B plus grade, they made it an A minus. And in my high school, A minus meant A. So I said, Dad, look, see? Right? And then they would go to my dad and say, your son is so like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And for a period of about 7 days, I didn't have any house chores. I had power on my head, right? Right. And it was like walking on water temporarily, right? Until, life got back and he just went back to that stuff. And so I learned that if I could get him to buy in, right? What do you have to do? You've got to sing, which is something I did, and you've got to be brave enough. So curiosity plus means you got to be brave enough to actually embarrass yourself,
Mm.
right? Right? So no fear about the embarrassment, and you go and do that, and all you need to have happen is that he became dad different, right? As long as he became dad different and not dad same, that moment that I captured gave me the opportunity. So I would learn to do that over and over again. Like, for example, how I got 3 million people in southern China to know about me while I was still studying medicine in Mount Sinai here. I was on a radio show, kind of just like yours. It was a government one, and it was called Radio Television Hong Kong. And I said, do you know, it was like for 60 seconds, do you know what could cause you to age faster? It's found in your cosmetics and your skincare. And it's the same ingredient you find in your dishwashing detergent. And by the way, it is called sodium lauryl sulfate. By drying out your skin, it causes wrinkles. It's really cheap to use. So then, all right, I'm done. Well, people called back. Many, many people called. And then soon I would become a regular guest. And that was enough back then, right? And it was the year 2000, 2001, and print media, other things. Within 30 days, I was in every single print media. Suddenly, I became the Monte Cristo. Right? I was given I was given 4 years of a room in the Peninsula Hotel. It was like the Grand Suite. This wasn't like the hotel room for $200-300. We're talking about $4,000 or $5,000. Investors would be throwing their monies at wanting me to, and I can't write Chinese. To this day, I still don't write Chinese. And people said, with that ability, why didn't you learn to read and write Chinese? I said, because I want to keep my escape clause. I wanted to show my two daughters, who are now 7 and 9, dad cannot read or write Chinese. I don't want to be the dad that is number one. I want to be number one in their hearts. And if I can achieve that by not writing Chinese, first of all, it saves time and I don't have to do that much work, right? Right? And the other thing is if they still love me and I'm still number one, wow, boy, have I created a moat around myself. So
Mm.
my wife is the same thing. She read about me in New York in a magazine, right? That's that print media power.
Yeah.
In her hair salon, she's reading about this individual. She's 10 years younger than me. I mean, just think about it. If I could get a 10-year younger girl to where I am number one in her heart, because we end up dating, we end up getting married, and she wins all the other girls that thought I would marry them. Ooh, that would be a good change for any argument we would ever have, right? So I would play this same set of cards over and over again is I don't need to be number one to everybody. I
Mm.
just need to be number one to those using tools that create a moat around myself by being honest, true, right? But delivering things that just couldn't happen, making things like, for example, hitting on 19, right, on the blackjack table. Right? I've done that maybe 50 times. I've hit on 20 and gotten 21, right? And the crowd that you build around you when you do that, I don't do that normally because remember the odds are against you.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to create a story around someone, I've done it with my wife, she's been with me to the tables. I've done it with crowds that build up. Is under normal circumstances you don't do things like that, but under certain circumstances where you want the story. So another example was the graphene stuff, right? You know, I'm educated in medicine. To go and talk about skincare and create that following, you'd stop there. But you saw that I
Yeah.
went and created the graphene thing and created the world's first method to get graphene from raw graphite in the ground into graphene. And then while I was down in Florida, because people, Ron, by the way, Ron Rickert, he's built the first house that can withstand a category 5+ in Boca. I was at the house. He's built the house. His generator that he built for his daughter's house is so the base of that generator is the roof level of other houses in Boca. So you think like the guy, so he reads about me because I saved Bill and Kathy from an explosion on an island, right? This is very James Bondy like, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that, blue waters, you're being flown in a private plane, done that a few times. But remember Curiosity Plus. Indiana Jones did it. Lara Croft did it. Who was paying for them? Maybe the Queen, whatever it was.
Mm.
They would keep themselves busy to the, Montezuma, wherever they're looking for this lost treasure, right? Well, Alfred was doing, like, how did Alfred get paid working for Batman, right? So I said, we actually all can do this. So my latest and greatest, back in 2017 when I became a high school teacher, led to the TED Talk, but it also led to me, when interest rates were really low, borrowing $12 million at 3 and some odd change percent. I never used to borrow like that. And I would just buy more and more real estate. So I ended up having $20 million of real estate. Like, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, right. So when I gave a speech down in the southern US, people would say, we spend so much on healthcare and our longevity and our quality of life and people getting sicker. The US isn't number one. We're not the happiest place on earth either.
Mm.
So what do you think, Doc? What do you think? And I said, and here it comes, right? I said, in order to find the ability for people to live in 116, not just for one person, but for a vast majority, in order for you to have quality and not just quantity of life, you have to keep betting. And what makes the United States so unique is it transformed me. My father grew up in China. He was number one in China, but he had that mentality. What I grew up here is that I learned that anything is possible in this country as long as you keep betting, right? You got to keep trying, even when you're losing. Like, we're not really good in our statistics, and our kids don't score very well. But guess what we promote here? We promote sports, not to be number one in sports, but the ability to learn that you can do something when your body's still young, right? And you can try something. And as long as that mentally gets in you, right, then you can do anything that's possible, as long as you still preserve the desire and the passion to keep doing that. And what makes America so great is that form of energy is mitochondrial. It's not gasoline driven.
Yeah.
It's not electric powered, because that's just time. But mitochondrial energy is what gets you and I up in the morning. It's what some people have superpowers and have the ability to just get themselves out of a bind by finding the statistically most unlikely path, and then go and choose it. It's the same reason why I chose to borrow 12 million. It's like, people said, why'd you do it? You didn't have to go and risk your life. I said, it wasn't a risk. It was in case I had two girls that don't have any capabilities. Like, I didn't get a lot of capabilities from my dad. So, you extend this out, they probably don't get all my capabilities. Or maybe they don't use the capabilities I have. That's how nature works. So real estate doesn't require a lot of brain power. But what I did differently was I didn't use any of the income when it was at 3% for any of my personal stuff. I only kept buying and building and buying and building. And every time I built some more, I added to the pot and built more. And now interest rates are at 7+%.
Yeah.
Right. And people said, your loans are coming due, Doc. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to just take out the bank. What? You actually were able to save that much so that you can just take out the lender? I said, yes. And I actually wasn't greedy, and I didn't go and do things. So how do you throttle between curiosity plus, which is being aggressive, but at the same time having the other bipolar version of, and it's not about being bipolar. You have to have purpose driven. So see, what I was doing is, my purpose wasn't about myself. It wasn't self purpose. It was about building community. And when you want something about community, like when I go and do this kind of talk, I tell myself, right, it's about building community. And sometimes I tell myself that I'm already a multimillionaire, right? And I keep telling myself that. And so that's what happens. I act like a multimillionaire because I told myself that, right? So it's about, just like the musicals I did in high school, it's getting into that role and mindset, right? You have to build good community, and it begins with you. If you are selfish, you will attract takers, right?
Yeah.
If you're a giver, you will attract takers and givers, right? So then it's up to your awareness to sort, right? You by being a giver, you have the chance to attract takers and givers. By being a taker, you attract more takers. So what I do is I look at, why am I doing this? I can't read or write Chinese. Why am I building a Chinese community? Because I want my girls, by the time they're 17, 18, 20, to find a hand in marriage, people who love them. Well, that's a whole nother reason into the future of why you're like embarrassing yourself on the Chinese show with a wig on.
Yeah.
So, right? Yeah, because you didn't see me speak English with a wig on. I've never done that before. I got to try that sometime. But, it's like, right? But only when I build a community of lovers, right? So
Yeah.
I have a couple of experiments that I'm doing that are purpose driven, way into the future. So I went to Harvard and Wharton not as an undergrad. That's an important key point. So I didn't waste my time later on. But then I found out that with the teaching, I learned that I couldn't send my kids to public school or private school because neither would teach them the Chinese, like how to be Chinese, as opposed to, oh, yeah, you can read or write. I wanted them to compose in Chinese, do other things, because whether we like it or not, China will be number one. Hopefully not, right? Because I'm on the US side, but they'll still be number two though. So
Yeah.
one and two is not a bad, it's not bad to be number two. And when I was in high school, I graduated not even in the top 10, but I graduated like I think 28 out of 350 kids. That's top 10%. And top 10% is fine. I met a lot of friends, a lot of
Yeah.
people. I had a good time. I didn't spend my time on all my eggs in one basket. So how I'm doing this is I didn't teach my kids English. I homeschool them because we're allowed as Americans. And I want to teach them survival skills of how do you like weird survival skills. So how do you do hydroponics? Right? Brought them to NASA, why they need to do hydroponics. Why can't they be like the Amish and use human feces? Right? By the way, the Amish do use human feces to grow their vegetables. Well, and it's cheap, right? Because we humans produce a lot of feces. Well, if you're in a space shuttle and you start using that, you could lead to disease and outbreak. So but hydroponics leads to weak roots. How do we do hydroponics and then be able to transfer also the soil modalities? How do you learn that skill set? That became a discovery. So I now have a intellectual property around being able to do that and pulsing between 11 to 1 p.m. in the day, taking that spectrum of light and pulsing that for 15 hours a day makes any crop grow really big. Right? So it's just going to be like, right? Because you're like, wow, I didn't get like morning sun. I didn't get sunset sun. I got like afternoon maximum. You do not want to be out there, sun, in the blast, right? And then you feed them the nutrients, but you're measuring constantly. And then you transfer them out into the soil. And how you use that is by accessing another kingdom, by the way. The plant kingdom needs to leverage, obviously, the animal kingdom because I'm helping them, but also the bacteria kingdom. Because if you can put probiotics around those plants, it's been shown. So what kind of mixture? Now we have IP around it. You can get seedlings. And isn't food security? Oh, I know Paul talked about AI, but I'll tell you, food security. You want me to show you how we all die? A terrible death? I'm going to help you relive COVID again. But this time, it is the bird flu. And you know how all these bird feeders, people love to watch their birds?
Yeah.
This bird gives the other birds the bird flu. And then now it's learned in 2024 how to go into cattle. So, and then it learns to jump. Like if you use cow's milk on July 8th, I'm going to give your audience a gift. On July 8th, there was a publication about the research of how spraying cow's milk into a ferret, provided it's an infected cow with bird flu, will cause the ferret to be infected, ferret and mice.
Huh.
So we know that it jumps into humans. We don't know exactly how many, but imagine if we had COVID, but it affected it affected our chicken, therefore our chicken eggs. We can't trust the cow because the cow, and now the pig goes as well. And then can we trust the vegetables because we often use manure, right? So we can't trust our vegetables. So we can't, like, this is not what you want to have happen. I hope that this never happens, but this is one version of how things could get really dark. You know what you need? You need community.
Yeah.
You need community so that we learn not to take before the sky falls, right? We learn to give and do things. So how do we learn how to give? So I have a tutoring business as well, a coaching business called Dr. Wholeson's Academy.
Yeah.
I coach kids how to be an inventor's mindset. Now, why do that?
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you will not be going for the scores. My dad scored really well, so he had the scores to show it. But if you get enough hits in life, you start forgetting things. You might not know, like, I don't know. Let's talk about V equals IR. Voltage is current times resistance. If you become a carpenter or you're an electrician, you might not be doing those paper calculations like you did in physics in high school. Well, that's all it takes. Becoming an adult, because you got to keep making the dollars, you're not going to learn and remember that paper information. But as an inventor, an innovator, you have to.
Yeah.
Why? Because everything you create, no one's seen before. If you created something that existed, then you don't get a patent. You have to create the non-existent, bring it onto the earth. So you're constantly having to sell the impossible and the invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I liked. I read that, maybe I saw it in one of your videos where you asked college graduates if they thought there'd be a job waiting for them just because they got a degree, and you challenged them, instead of hoping there's a job waiting for you, why don't you create
Yes.
the job? And I love that. And I think that's a great message for our whole community. If we want this certain life, if we want this certain community, if we want these certain things in our world, these feelings, create them.
Yes.
Right? Like, we don't have to sit and wait for it to show up for us and go through our same grind day after day, like you said, insanity. Day after day, we're doing the same thing, but we want to feel differently. We have the beauty to create it. And going back to your COVID example, I think one of the great things of COVID is that people realize the value of time. They realize the value of community. They realize the value of, man, if I got to do all this shit by myself, that's not a whole lot of fun.
No.
And I think that's why humans are going to be okay. And I think that's why the world isn't as bad as some people want to make you think it is. But I'm also going to be real. It puts the onus on you to take accountability, to be aware, to want more in your life, and then to do actions, take actions for it.
I think the world is going to be bad in certain spots, and the world is going to be great. And people will say, "What are you talking about? The world's really bad," and because in their spot, in their bubble, right, it'll be great, and it'll be like lots of bubbles. It'll be just very spotted, right? Because we just created a great spot for ourselves, right? You now have my phone number. I gave you a certain piece of content, right? I never thought I would be building an island. I am now, after I've been in Florida, because there's a guy with 108 acres. I mean, to be able to buy 108 acres on an island, he's putting up his piece so that I could be there as a scientist.
Right.
So now you have land, you have a home. You didn't even have to pay for it, right? Where did I meet him? I met him in a timeline back to 2007 when I saved Bill and Kathy's life, led to Ron Rickard building that super powerhouse. Ron knows Michael, who has that 108 acres. And then, that island never worked. I was eating canned food on that island in 2007 at Bill and Kathy's house.
Right.
That's all they had. It was like canned food and more canned food. All right. But they retired from General Electric. They were wealthy. That's why they were able to do that. But then an explosion hit. And at that explosion, they were powerless and crippled. I was on the island. All I wanted to do was leave. Right. The U.S. was crashing. That was 2008. Obama was on the screen. He hadn't been elected yet, but gas didn't arrive. So the go-kart and all this other stuff I was given stopped working. Now you could do solar-powered go-karts.
Yeah.
We have to do that because there's a lot of sun on that island. But this place called Rum, and we were joking, Rum America, Rum Key, C-A-Y, Rum Key became like this terrible memory. And then Rum Key 2.0 is, imagine if we could make it better. I was hired to go make the island better the first time. And I said, never again.
Yeah.
Never say never, because now it's happening again. So you work on projects and you work on things, but how do you do what I talked about, create your own? That's the reason for the real estate. That's the reason I did it for my kids. I might be okay, but I need to create a way for them to stay curious. The stay part, capitalize that. in order to stay curious, you have to not have to worry about the roof on your head, the food on your table, right? In order to stay curious, either you have mental strength of iron and steel or graphene maybe, or someone has to take care of it. So if you've been so blessed that someone worked really hard and they did that, one thing to remember, stop looping. You don't have to be that person, nor should you be me. I don't want to be someone else. You need to be you.
Yeah.
In order to do that, you got to be able to stay curious. And just because you don't have a lot of money or let's say a lot of education, but you have a lot of gusto and you have a lot of effort, that's the community I'm building for that island place, right? So it'll be rum physical, where if you have a certain amount of money, you can go to the island and build your home there, a second home there, or rum virtual. So let's say I run into a job as a scientist, but I'm okay. I don't need that. Why don't I just give it to you? LinkedIn isn't the place for that to happen, right? Because there's so much hoarding. As long as you have a few hoarders or it leads to more.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to create a community where if you've studied physics your whole life, chemistry your whole life, and somehow you got derailed because you didn't make the competition cut at Space Force or something like that, well, come over. Don't go make pizza.
Yeah.
Like if you go make pizza, you're not going to remember the equation force equals mass times acceleration, right? Or momentum equals mass times velocity. What? You're not going to remember those things. I'll tell you, don't lose the touch. Come over. We got to build, in order to build the island to withstand category 5 plus, because I tried to do that here in New Jersey. And the town looked at the plans and said, what are you building? I'm building a garage, right? They didn't get it. And rather than changing someone's mindset, just go to the people who already have the mindset. Like you, Jerrod, you have their mindset. Driving around, right? You've seen it all. You've seen it all. You've seen that it's basically the same. And then there's these pockets of people. If only we could all be in the same place, but that's not how it works. Physical is hard. There's barriers. People don't want to move. Virtual, combine it with that, and so we want to build a science innovation center on the island, and we would just put out shirts as we like hard, right? Sell the shirts, and then if you like hard, I like hard too. We don't choose easy, right?
That's true. That's a great way to wrap it up. Dr. Chiu, it's an honor to have you on the show today. Where can our community stay in touch with you and be part of your community?
Well, the homeschooling stuff is dwaprep.com. The asphalt discovery, which we didn't talk about, is called Phenegra, PHENEGRA.com, Phenegra, and that's the Harvard winnings. And I'll leave you with a quick one. Is for the beginning of time, whenever there were potholes, right? Some people believe it was during the Roman times when they had the chariots hitting the holes, and then people could make pots out of those holes. That's why they're called potholes. Well, today, asphalt is just a bad material. I'm about to receive a major grant. I won the Harvard, or my team, the idea won the Harvard Tough Technology Award. But what is it, though? If you think about a parking lot and you're 50 spots away from your destination, nobody wants to park there. That has a pothole. Are you going to fill it with the same pave mix as where the 18-wheeler is running over and that needs something reinforced? We've been using the same pave mix, right, for wherever the spots are. We never differentiated. My discovery or innovation is to change the pave mix so that when you have an 18-wheeler, put something better there. And then in the places where no one wants to park, put something lesser there, right? And that allows you to optimize your cost structure on lots, highways, and other things. Like if you're on a soft shoulder and there's a pothole, we should fill it because people do drive over it. But we shouldn't fill it with the same material. And when we're saving that cost, we should take the places where people really drive and reinforce it with stronger material. If we did that, we would create a mathematical equation and a cost-saving measure, because we got 55 million potholes a year in just the U.S. alone. We would be able to transform potholes forever. What do you think? Right?
Makes sense. Makes sense to me. Dr. Chiu, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor to share your story, my friend.
It's an honor that you had me. And I really hope that during the months that you're going to come out to Jersey here, if I'm here in Jersey or New York, look me up and dinner's on me.
I'll take you up on that. Thank you so much.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.